is, so the scenario says that we need to do this calculation using a method. So we want to accept the speed and then pass it on to a method. I'm going to show you the solution through two ways. Okay, please watch this and then I hope you will understand both methods. So calculate fine, I'm going to double click here, calculate fine, and look at the method name I'm in right now. I don't want to change this. The method name automatically created is button click, button1 underscore click, which is a valid name. What's the return type? Void, meaning this method does not responds back to anybody. It's a void method and private. Nobody else can see this. Now I want to write all my code inside this method for processing of this button. But I can also do one more thing. I can call another methods from within this method. So this is an exercise about calling another methods also. So I'm going to do this through two ways. First one is I will call a method to do speed find calculation processing. So I'm going to do that, and you know what that method will look like? It will be calc, what was the name? Calc find. So I'm going to call a calc find method which will do all the processing and do the work. So calc find. So we want to do the processing through calc find. What is this? Okay, it automatically changed to calculate find. I don't know why C# likes this, so I am not bothered. Calculate find. Okay, I'm going to declare and define this method now. What it will do? I'm going to say private void calculate find. Method starts like this. So private is an access modifier. Nobody else from another classes can see this method name and execute it. Only this class which it is in now, right now, it's inside class form1. So it can only see this method called calculate underscore find, calculate find. It has a void return type. It will not respond to anybody, and it has this name, calculate find. That's what its name is, and it will not respond to. So what about the arguments? These are optional. You don't have to give them. If you need to, you can give arguments over here. So it's optional. So I'm going to start processing. What do I need to do? I need to first of all read the value of the speed that the user has entered. This speed that the user was going on, or the user has entered. So I'm going to declare a variable int speed is equal to speed txt dot text. Okay, and can anybody help me? What else do I need to do here? Int dot parse, to convert it. Yes, to convert it from text to integer, or string to integer. So now I have the integer version of the speed, and I can now do the calculation. So what the calculation is, if you read the scenario says if the speed is less than 120, then there is no find. So now there is a simple case of if and else if. Yes. So if speed is 120, less than 120, no fine. Between 120 and 150, 600. Over 150 is 1000. So let's code that here. I'm going to write a comment, read the speed, and then determine the fine, and then display the fine. So that's what we want to do, display the fine. So if I'm going to declare also another value, int fine is equal to 0. So initially there is no fine. Now let's determine how much fine should there be. So if speed is less than 120, fine is 0, no fine, because the speed is less than 1. How do you know this is less than or greater than? You know, these are two symbols, shift less than and shift greater than. So which one is less than and greater than? Students often get confused. Well, the one which looks like an L is less than. This symbol which looks like an L means it is less than. The one which does not look like an L is greater than. So if speed is less than 120, then there is no fine, and if it is between 120 and 150, there is some fine. Can anybody help me construct the else if part? Else if greater than 120. So the question is not if it's greater than 120, the question is that if it's between 120 and 150 inclusive. So when you have inclusive, then you have to do equals to, meaning if it is greater than or equal to 120, then 120, and speed is less than equal to 150. So that's the correct else if. So this will signify that it is between 120 and 150 inclusive of both corners, 120 and 150 including. Another way of writing this is you do, that's I would suggest you don't copy me now, please just see the explanation, you will get ample time to code this. You can also do this like this: greater than 119 and less than 151. It means the same thing. Greater than 119 includes 120, less than 150 includes 151, includes 150. Greater than 119 does not include 119. That is included by less than 120. So this is another way. Or if you want to be very, very simplistic, I would go for 120. That's more simpler because you have greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. Anyway, both of them means the same thing. Okay, so if it's between 120 and 150, then the fine is 600. Okay, and the last one says if it is more than 150, then the fine is 1000. How do I write that? Anybody can help me here? Else? Else if, you mean, or else brackets? Else bracket? Then else if? Speed greater than
150.
Okay, that's another way. There are two ways to do this. Yes, there are two ways to do this. Else if speed is greater than 150, you say fine equals to 1000. Well, this is correct. However, no need for this, because otherwise you're saying if it's less than 150, no fine. If it is between 120 to 150, 600. What else is remaining? More than 150 is remaining. So if you say else, it is obvious that you are talking about more than 150, because it was not less than 120. It was not between 120 and 150. Obviously, it is more than 150. So this is but what if you write this? Well, you can write this, but the computer will be 1/1000th of a second slow. You won't notice this because all of us have Core i7s, but computer will be a little bit slow. It's unnoticeably slow. So now we want to display this. So the displaying part is the most easiest part, obviously. So we want to display this by what's the name? Find.txt, right? So let's go back. Find.txt. Find.txt dot text is equal to find. Who can help me fix this? Dot toString, yes. Dot toString, or just add an empty string to it. Okay, so that's how we do this, through calculate find method. So we have a calculate find method. Let's run this. I'm going to run this now. I start, and if you see the calculation, I enter 120, 600, because 120 inclusive. I entered 119, 0. I entered 150. What should it be? 600. Above 151, anything above 150 is 1000. Okay, so the program seems to work, and guess what? This is not procedural programming. Congratulations, this is into methods. So you know what are methods. So this was the original method. You see, if I click on calculate find, I should have written only inside this function, button click. Only inside this function, button click. But what I can also do is call another method, which I've just done, calculate find, and what it does is it does reading, it does calculation, and it displays back. So it does all that for me. So this is one method. You can write the code. I'm gonna just pause this here. So we have another button over here called calculate find by overloading. What we want to do is we want to have a similar name method, a method with a similar name like this, calculate find, but different arguments in the same class. So, and that is for this button, the other button. So double click this, and now it should give some arguments, because we want to create another method with the same name as of the previous method we created, calculate find, but difference should be arguments. There should be something inside in the new method here. So what we will do this part ourselves in the original method. In the main method of calculate find by overloading, we will read this part ourselves, read the speed, and it will pass it on to the new method which will have this argument, speed. So that's what we want to do. And for making it very easier, let's just copy this line in speed. So when I double click this, calculate find by overloading, I can read the speed. So I read the speed, and I want to pass this speed on to another method. So I'll create another method called calculate find, and I call it, and I give it the speed. So what I'm doing is I want to call the another method, calculate find, but I also want to give it this argument. Please calculate the speed and take the speed. This is the speed. I'm giving you the speed. It will not go and read the text box. It will calculate based on what the value I give to it. But I don't have this method yet. I want to create it now. So let's just create it. Private void calculate. Exactly same name, please. Some of you are having method name issues. You should copy and paste if you are having difficulties remembering or typing exactly the same text. I copy this calculate find and paste it over here, and then it should have an argument over here. What's the argument? I am giving you the speed. What's the speed? It's int variable and the same name. Well, the same name as the variable name as the original passing is not necessary, but for consistency we'll keep the same name. This I'm passing it on a speed, and it is accepting the speed here. And then open the brackets for the method definition. Any questions up till now? I would suggest you guys don't copy the code with me. Don't write the code while I'm explaining. Write it later on when I'll give you ample time for this. So what's happening here is I'm call the overloaded method and pass speed argument. So I'm passing the speed argument to that method, and in the actual method I declare private. This is the method header, by the way, private void calculate underscore find int speed. So this integer speed it is taking over here. Now here's my question: can I remove this? Why not?
Because it's not
If I remove this, it will be exactly the same name as the original calculate find, and it will say it's a duplicate name. See, form 1 already defines a member called calculate find. So it says it's already there. Calculate find is already there. But if I change the argument, then it will not complain, because it's different argument. So it's an overloaded method. Even though it's the same name, but the arguments are different, so no complaints. So here is another question. Please don't type this. Can I do this? Look at this. Another method. Can I do this? Yes, I can. No problem. Another similar method name, exact same name, but the argument is different. String, not integer. It's string, not integer. I can do that if I want to. I'm not doing it because it's not part of my scenario. So I'll just remove that. And calculate fine. I pass it on the speed I read myself. So who is reading the speed? This button is reading the speed from the form and passing it on to the calculate speed, the overloaded method. So the remaining part we can do ourselves. You see, just copy and paste. Int fine is equal to 0, find text or text to string. It's basically just copy and paste. So what's the difference? The difference is that you divide the responsibility. One method is reading and it is giving the value to the other one, and it will then calculate fine. That's the difference, and that's all the code you need to write. If I run this, should it work or no? Enter speed and I say 160, 1000. The reading is done by this buttons method. Calculation and display is done by the calling method, the overloaded method. Let's look at this. This is button 2 click, which is the bigger button. Calculate method by overloading. It reads the speed and passes on the value of the speed to another method. Can you do this now? Or if you have questions, please go ahead and ask. So we learned calculate find by value returning. So let's double click this. There's a bit of copy paste again because we will use almost the same code, but the method will be different. We want to do value returning. So let's do this. We will. What we want to do, this is reading the speed and then calculating the fine and then displaying. These are the three things we want to do basically. So the value returning method, let's do this. We read the speed ourselves, but the calculation of fine, let's get this from the value returning method. Let's change this so that we get the returning of fine, the value of the actual fine from a method. So we want to do this ourselves, speed ourselves. Let's do this ourselves, not through the function. When you double click this, I'm going to send you my project after the class anyway. So you read the speed, and this calculation of fine, determine the fine. We will do this by a function, value returning function. Let's do this. Now int fine is equal to get from a function. Get the value from the function. You can do this through your own calculation, but we want to do the calculation of the fine through another function. So we'll say get fine. Get fine, and we'll pass on this value speed, and then we'll display ourselves the value, the final fine. So fine txt.text is equal to fine.toString. So we read the speed, calculate fine by value returning method, display fine. So we have to now write this method which will calculate fine by value returning. Also the same thing which we have done in two buttons before, but this is the third method by value returning. So it's not keeping quiet, it will give me back something, and it is not displaying itself. This method will not display the value, the final fine. It will calculate the final fine and give me back over here. It will not display. The previous methods, they display themselves. Fine txt or text fine is the previous methods. this will not display. It will just calculate find silently and give me back here, and then I will display. So that's the difference. This is the value returned. So let's declare and define this function. Private. Anybody can help me? Int, yes. Get fine. Yes, int speed. Thank you. So now I have a get fine. It takes int speed, and there's an error here because it says you're not returning anything. Because you said you will reply back with an integer. Where is that return integer? So I will now, well, very simple. I'll copy and paste this. Determine the fine, the code which does if else, if else, if else. So I'll do that calculation, and I will not display anything. I will just return it. What should I write? Return fine. Return fine. Yeah. So one line I did not copy. Int fine. So I do that calculation and I return it back without displaying it. Return the fine or reply. So this is the replying back. So you call that function get fine and you get back the fine. I'm going to pause this here.